1 year after walking away from my marriage, I sometimes catch myself smiling at how differently our lives turned out. What began as the worst day of my life, when I caught Jessica with my colleague, became the doorway to unexpected happiness. While I rebuilt my life piece by piece, she spiraled downward, losing not only me but everything she thought she wanted. Leaving was the hardest decision I ever made, but as I look at my life now versus hers, I know it was also the wisest. Let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If my journey from betrayal to rebuilding resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join me as I share how I transformed my life from rock bottom to a happiness I never thought possible. I was 32 years old and Jessica was 30 when our marriage collapsed. We had been college sweethearts meeting in our junior year at Northwestern University, dating for 3 years, and then married for 7. By all external measures, we had built the perfect life together in Chicago. Our home in the Lincoln Park neighborhood was everything we had dreamed about during those early days of planning our future while still in our cramped college apartments. My career as a software engineer had flourished at TechVision, one of the most prestigious companies in the industry. Jessica had climbed the corporate ladder at a downtown marketing firm, recently securing a promotion to executive level that she had been working toward for years. We surrounded ourselves with a circle of similarly successful couples hosting dinner parties every month, where conversations flowed around career achievements, home renovations, and plans for the future. After focusing on our careers through our 20s, we had finally reached the point where starting a family felt right. Jessica had stopped taking birth control 3 months earlier, and we had converted the spare bedroom into what would eventually become a nursery. We had even started researching the best schools in the neighborhood, planning years into the future for children who didn't yet exist. The first hints that something was off were subtle enough that I dismissed them as nothing. Jessica began staying at work later, often not arriving home until after 8 or 9 at night. She explained it away as the demands of her new position, and I had no reason not to believe her. I noticed her buying new clothes more stylish and expensive than her usual taste, but assumed it was part of projecting the executive image in her new role. There were other signs too, looking back. She grew increasingly protective of her phone, always keeping it face down and taking calls in another room. Our intimacy, once a natural and frequent part of our relationship, became scheduled and mechanical. On the rare occasions it happened at all. When I tried to discuss these changes, Jessica would attribute everything to work stress, promising things would improve once she adjusted to her new responsibilities. I was scheduled for a week-long business trip to Denver in April, meeting with a potential client who was interested in implementing our software platform. The meetings were productive, and we wrapped up everything a day and a half earlier than planned. Rather than staying the extra time, I decided to surprise Jessica by coming home early. I even stopped to pick up flowers and her favorite takeout from the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated her promotion. The moment I walked through our front door remains frozen in my memory, every detail crystallized by the shock that followed. It was just after 6 in the evening, much earlier than Jessica would expect me home, even if she knew I was back from my trip. The house was quiet, but I noticed 2 wine glasses on the coffee table and an unfamiliar jacket draped over one of our dining chairs. I called out Jessica's name as I set down the food and flowers, a strange uneasiness creeping through me. When she didn't answer, I headed upstairs, hearing muffled sounds from our bedroom. I still remember hesitating outside that door, some part of me already knowing what I would find, but desperately hoping I was wrong. When I opened the door, I found my wife in our bed with Andrew Taylor, a colleague I had personally mentored when he joined TechVision 2 years earlier. The shock rendered me speechless as they scrambled to cover themselves, Jessica's face transitioning from pleasure to horror as she registered my presence. In that single moment, the life we had built together shattered completely, leaving nothing but jagged edges that would cut deeply in the months to come. The immediate aftermath of discovering Jessica with Andrew was a blur of shouting, crying, and accusations. I ordered Andrew to get out of my house, watching in stunned silence as he gathered his clothes and slipped past me without meeting my eyes. Once he was gone, Jessica switched from initial denial to blaming me, claiming my frequent late nights at the office and business trips had pushed her into another man's arm. The revelation that followed was even more devastating than the initial discovery. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a recent development. Jessica admitted after hours of confrontation that the affair had been going on for 6 months. 6 months of lies, deception, and betrayal, while I remained completely oblivious, planning our future and thinking we were both working toward the same goals. I couldn't bear to sleep in our bed or even stay in the house that night. I grabbed some essentials and spent the night in my car parked at a nearby 24-hour grocery store lot, too numb to cry and too agitated to sleep. The next day I checked into a hotel downtown, needing physical distance from the scene of the betrayal. Over the following weeks, the full extent of Jessica's deception came to light. Those weekend girls' trips she had taken to Michigan and Wisconsin had actually been getaways with Andrew. The late nights at work often weren't spent at the office at all. I discovered charges on a credit card statement for hotels right here in Chicago, just 15 minutes from our home. There were expensive restaurant bills, charges for gifts I had never seen, and countless Uber receipts to and from locations that had nothing to do with her workplace. Jessica alternated between tearful apologies and angry defenses of her actions. One day she would beg for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again, and the next she would blame me for being emotionally unavailable, too focused on my career, or not romantic enough. The psychological whiplash was almost as painful as the betrayal itself. Her family, particularly her mother Diane, whom I had once been close with, pressured me relentlessly to forgive Jessica and save our marriage. According to them, divorce was not an option for a couple with our history and potential. They minimized the betrayal, calling it a mistake that shouldn't outweigh 7 years of marriage. Diane even showed up unannounced at my hotel, lecturing me about marriage being work and the importance of forgiveness. I struggled intensely with self-doubt during this period. Had I somehow caused this by working too much? Had I missed signs that Jessica was unhappy? Was I partially to blame for the breakdown of our marriage? These questions kept me awake night after night in my sterile hotel room, staring at the ceiling and replaying our relationship in my mind, searching for the moment where everything went wrong. The betrayal cut even deeper when I discovered text messages between Jessica and Andrew going back months. Messages where they mocked me, shared intimate details of our marriage, and planned their rendezvous. I learned that several of Jessica's friends knew about the affair and had helped cover for her people who had sat at our dinner table and smiled at me while knowing what was happening behind my back. Andrew's betrayal carried its own unique sting. I had taken him under my wing at work, introduced him to my professional network, and even helped him secure a promotion. He had been to our home numerous times for dinner or game nights, always acting like a friend, while secretly pursuing my wife. The situation at work became unbearable as rumors spread throughout the office. Colleagues who had heard about the affair either avoided me out of awkwardness or approached with unwanted sympathy. I could feel the whispers follow me down hallways and stop abruptly when I entered rooms. My performance suffered as I struggled to focus on code and client requirements while my personal life crumbled. My health deteriorated rapidly. I lost 15 pounds in a month, unable to eat properly or maintain any kind of routine. Insomnia became my constant companion, leaving me exhausted but unable to quiet my mind enough to rest. My usually neat appearance became disheveled, as basic self-care felt like insurmountable tasks. The lowest point came during a birthday party for my friend Mark. I had forced myself to attend, thinking social interaction might help pull me out of my depression. Instead, the sight of happy couples and normal conversation overwhelmed me. I ended up having a complete breakdown in Mark's bathroom, sobbing uncontrollably until his wife called my brother to come get me. That night, curled up on my brother's couch, I felt utterly broken, unable to imagine ever feeling whole again. The conversation with my brother Paul the morning after my breakdown became the turning point in my journey. While making coffee in his kitchen, he didn't offer empty platitudes or tell me things would get better. Instead, he asked a simple question that shifted my perspective entirely. What if this pain was not something to escape, but a doorway to something better? That same week, I consulted with a divorce attorney, Margaret Wilkins, recommended by a colleague who had gone through a similar situation. She was direct and practical, outlining what steps I needed to take to protect myself. Under her guidance, I began documenting everything related to Jessica's infidelity and financial dishonesty. I discovered she had been siphoning money from our joint account into a private one for months, presumably preparing her own exit strategy or funding her affair. When Jessica was served with divorce papers at her office, the controlled narrative she had been crafting among our social circle shattered. She had been telling friends and family that we were working through a rough patch caused by my emotional distance. The public nature of being served forced her to confront the reality that I was actually leaving, not just making a temporary stand. Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. She showed up at my hotel that evening, alternating between hysterical crying and cold anger. She promised to cut all contact with Andrew, suggested couples therapy, and even offered to move to a new city for a fresh start. When those tactics failed, she threatened to take me for everything in the divorce, claiming she had sacrificed career opportunities for our marriage. The process of dividing our assets was painful in its finality. Each item from the home we had built together required a decision about its fate. The house itself, once our pride and joy, now felt tainted by betrayal. We decided to sell it, neither of us wanting to live surrounded by memories that had become poisoned. Watching the for sale sign go up in the front yard felt like the official end of a chapter in my life. A particularly difficult moment came when I finally confronted Andrew at work. I had avoided him successfully for weeks, but we eventually found ourselves alone in the break room. Rather than the heated exchange I might have once imagined, I simply told him that his actions revealed his character and that no professional success would compensate for such a fundamental moral failure. 2 weeks later, he requested a transfer to our Seattle office, unable to face the consequences of his actions daily. Jessica's family launched what felt like a campaign against me, portraying me as cold and unforgiving. They reached out to mutual friends, telling a version of events that minimized her actions and maximized my supposed emotional neglect. Some friends took sides, forcing others to choose their loyalty. Relationships I had valued for years dissolved in the acid of this conflict. As the reality of our separation solidified, Jessica's messages became increasingly vicious. The woman who had weeks earlier begged for reconciliation now accused me of wasting her youth and derailing her life plan. She claimed I had never really loved her if I could walk away conveniently, forgetting that she had been the one to betray our vows. The day we finalized our divorce in court marked exactly 4 months from the day I had discovered the affair. Jessica arrived dressed immaculately, a picture of composed dignity, until the judge made his final declarations. Then, as if a switch had flipped, she created a scene, sobbing loudly and accusing me of destroying our life together out of pride. The judge, clearly familiar with such displays, simply continued with the proceedings. When I signed the final papers, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I was carrying. The constant pressure in my chest that had been my companion for months eased slightly. I wasn't healed or even close to happy, but I could finally see a path forward that wasn't completely shrouded in darkness. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Wicker Park, a neighborhood I had always liked, but Jessica had found too eclectic for her taste. It was smaller than what we had shared, but it was mine alone, a space untouched by betrayal. I furnished it, simply buying new items rather than taking much from our shared life. The blank slate of those empty rooms represented the blank slate of my future, waiting to be filled with whatever I chose to create. That first weekend in my new place, Paul came over with a metal trash can and a bottle of bourbon. We took the few wedding photos I had kept and ceremonially burned them in the can on my small balcony, watching the flames consume the paper images of a happiness that had proven false. It was theatrical, perhaps, but the ritual brought a sense of closure that signing legal documents hadn't provided. My first night completely alone in the new apartment was a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I ordered pizza, drank too much bourbon, and alternated between crying and experiencing unexpected moments of relief. Without Jessica's presence or possessions around me, I could finally begin to remember who I was before us, the individual who had somehow gotten lost in the identity of being a husband. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I had established new routines that helped anchor me as I rebuilt my life. Mornings began with a run along Lake Michigan, something I had enjoyed in college but abandoned during marriage. Evenings often found me at a local climbing gym, reconnecting with a hobby Jessica had never shown interest in. The physical exertion helped quiet my mind, and the tangible progress, as I tackled more difficult routes, provided a satisfying metric of growth. I rediscovered my passion for photography, something else that had fallen away during my marriage. Weekend mornings were often spent walking through different Chicago neighborhoods, camera in hand, capturing the character and details of the city I had lived in but never truly seen. These solo expeditions helped me become comfortable with my own company again. Through a coworker's recommendation, I joined a divorce recovery support group that met weekly at a community center near my apartment. Initially skeptical, I found unexpected comfort in the shared experiences of others navigating similar terrain. There was something powerfully healing about being understood without having to explain the complexity of emotions that followed betrayal and divorce. Several members of that group became close friends. Our bond formed through mutual understanding of what we had each endured. Professionally, my focus on work began to pay dividends. 6 months of channeling my energy into coding and problem-solving, rather than ruminating on my failed marriage, resulted in recognition from management. I received a promotion to senior software architect, a position I had been working toward for years but had thought was still far in my future. Therapy became an essential part of my recovery. My therapist, Dr. Levine, helped me process the trauma of betrayal and rebuild my shattered self-esteem. He challenged me to examine patterns in my life and relationship that might have contributed to my blindness to the warning sign. This wasn't about blaming myself for Jessica's choices, but about understanding how to better protect myself and create healthier relationships in the future. 8 months after my divorce, I met Maya quite by accident. I had wandered into her bookstore during one of my photography walks seeking shelter from an unexpected rainstorm. She recommended a novel that perfectly suited my taste, and we fell into an easy conversation about books that lasted until closing time. Unlike the rushed connection with Jessica in college, Maya and I built a friendship, first getting to know each other slowly over coffee dates and bookstore visits, before romance entered the equation. While my life was taking new and positive directions, I occasionally heard about Jessica through our dwindling circle of mutual friends. The contrast between our paths could not have been more stark. Within 3 months of our divorce, Andrew had left her for a younger colleague, repeating the same pattern that had destroyed our marriage. The irony was not lost on anyone, least of all Jessica, who had believed his promises of love and commitment. Her professional life suffered as well. The stress of the affair, divorce, and subsequent abandonment led to increased drinking, which affected her work performance. She received a formal warning from her firm after missing an important client presentation, having called in sick with what everyone knew was actually a hangover. 6 months later, she was passed over for another promotion she had been expecting. Attempts to reconnect with me began around the 9-month mark. First through mutual friends, casually inquiring about my well-being or suggesting we might meet for closure. When those indirect approaches yielded no response, she tried more direct methods, sending emails that ranged from apologetic to accusatory depending on what she thought might get my attention. I maintained my silence, recognizing these attempts as being more about her discomfort than any genuine remorse. 10 months post-divorce, I took my first true vacation in years, a solo trip to Alaska that I had always wanted to experience. Standing among the magnificent wilderness, photographing landscapes that made human concerns seem appropriately small, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. That trip marked a symbolic turning point, a clear delineation between my past life and whatever was yet to come. My relationship with Maya continued to develop at a thoughtful pace. Unlike my rush into commitment with Jessica, we took time to ensure compatibility in values and life goals. Maya had her own painful past, a serious relationship that ended when her partner couldn't accept her decision not to have children. Our shared experience with disappointment made us both cautious, but also more appreciative of the authentic connection we were building. Exactly 1 year after our divorce was finalized, Jessica sent me a message that was different from her previous attempts at contact. There was a humility to it that had been absent before, an acknowledgement of the pain she had caused, without any attempt to justify or explain it away. She shared that her life had fallen apart in the aftermath of her choices, that she had lost not only me but also her reputation, many friends, and the respect of colleagues. Her relationship with Andrew had been a painful lesson in karma, ending with the same betrayal she had inflicted on me. Reading her message, I was surprised to discover I felt no joy in her suffering. The man I had been a year ago might have found vindication in her unhappiness, but the person I had become through this journey could only feel compassion for another human experiencing pain, even one who had caused me so much hurt. I wished her healing, but maintained the distance that had allowed my own recovery to flourish. The greatest lesson from this painful chapter was learning that adversity reveals not just the character of others, but also your own capacity for growth and resilience. The betrayal that once seemed like it would define the rest of my life became instead the catalyst for building a more authentic one. By losing what I thought I wanted, I created space to discover what I truly needed. Today, I can honestly say I am happier than I was, even during the good years of my marriage. My relationship with Maya is built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect that feels unshakable in a way my marriage never did. My career continues to thrive with opportunities opening up that I might never have pursued if still in the comfortable but limiting patterns of my previous life. Most importantly, I have developed an inner peace that comes from facing your worst fear, surviving it, and discovering your own strength in the process. I have forgiven Jessica not for her benefit, but for my own freedom. Carrying anger would only tie me to the past, and the future I am creating deserves all of my energy and attention. The pain she caused will always be part of my story, but it no longer defines who I am or what I believe about love and trust. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings if we are brave enough to keep moving forward. Have you experienced betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth and happiness? Share your story in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming adversity. Your support means everything as we build this community of resilience and healing. Remember that your darkest moment might be the doorway to a light you never imagined possible. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to create beauty from whatever pain life has dealt you.